The story begins by alternating between the lives of our two protagonists in Russia. First, there's Dominika Igorova, a famous ballerina in charge of caring for her sick mother. Dominika leaves her mother with a caretaker after a doctor's appointment so she can go to work. She changes and puts on makeup before meeting the guests, who include her uncle Ivan Igorov, deputy director of the Russian Secret Service. He introduces her to Dmitry Ustinov, a Russian gangster who asks for a picture and uses the opportunity to inappropriately touch her. The play begins moments later, and Dominika is dancing as beautifully as ever when her dancing partner jumps and lands on her leg, breaking it. Dominika is immediately taken to the operating room. Nate Nash, a CIA agent, is the other character we follow as he answers a phone call from an automated caller who dictates some words to him. He decodes the address of a meeting location using those words, and he takes his gun with him before leaving. The park at night was chosen as the location for the secret meeting, and when he arrives, he notices he is being followed by a car. A mysterious man, codename Marble, is also walking towards him, and Nate hands him something as they cross the road before continuing on as if nothing had happened. The car is still following him, so to give the man a chance to flee, Nate creates a distraction by shooting the floor and begins running away as the car pursues him. He arrives in town and is surrounded by police as he approaches the American embassy. Inside, he meets with his superiors, who inform him that the asset is safe, but Nate will still be sent back to the United States for his error. The next day, Ivan pays a visit to Colonel Zakharov, the director of the Secret Service, in his office, where General Vladimir Korchnoi is also present. They show Ivan a video of Nate's meeting in the park and mention that he's a CIA agent who left the country that morning, but their main concern is figuring out who the other man is. We then cut to Dominika, who is waking up in the hospital to find her leg in a metal frame. She begins to cry when she realizes she will never be able to dance again. 3 months have passed. Ivan pays a visit to Dominika, who is still using a cane to walk. He mentions how a replacement for her has already been found and how the theater has been lending them the apartment and covering her mother's medical expenses, all of which will come to an end soon now that she no longer works for them. Ivan expresses his desire to assist her and invites her to come to him when she is ready. He also leaves an envelope for her before departing. Dominika opens the envelope and discovers photographs of her dancing partner romantically involved with her replacement. Plus a recording of a conversation between them implying he purposefully jumped on her so his girlfriend could take Dominika's place. We find Dominika in the theater later that day, watching her former partner and the new girl practice. Dominika follows them to the steam room after they've finished, only to find them having relations. Rage takes over, and Dominika begins to beat them both to the ground before fleeing. She notices her hands are stained with blood on the bus home and decides to get off, stopping at a payphone to report what she did as an accident. When she arrives at her apartment, she finds her mother on the bathroom floor, the caretaker nowhere to be found. Her mother informs her that she did not come because the theater no longer pays her. Dominika goes to see her uncle for assistance, knowing she has no other option. He agrees as long as she assists him with a minor case. The Secret Service wants to know more about Ustinov, whom Dominika met at the theater. Ivan desires that she approach him, befriend him, and gain his trust through her charms. Dominika initially refuses, but Ivan persuades her by reminding her how bad state hospitals are and how he can provide her mother with the best doctors instead. Dominika goes to the hotel where Ustinov is staying that night, wearing the dress she was given. She goes to the bar to await Ustinov's approach, which he does. Dominika tells him she's come to see him because she wants to feel special again, and they head to her room. She requests that the guards give them privacy, and Ustinov begins undressing as soon as his men leave the room, prompting Dominika to do the same. She does so after some hesitation, and when she gets closer, Ustinov takes advantage of her right away. Their conversation is abruptly cut short when a man in a black helmet appears behind Ustinov and cuts his throat. The body is thrown to the floor, and after gesturing for silence, the man throws Dominika a coat over her blood-stained body and leads her out of the room through a back door. He shoots an employee in the parking lot before loading them onto his bike and riding away to an abandoned building. Inside, the man removes his helmet, revealing Sergei Matorin, another Secret Service agent sent by Ivan, who is in another room in the same building as Korchnoi, watching Dominika on security cameras. When Korchnoi says she's a witness and should be killed, Ivan says she could be useful. Ivan switches rooms to see Dominika and admits he knew what was going to happen in that room but didn't tell her because she wouldn't have done it if she knew. He then makes her an offer, saying that because she's so good at it, she can be sent to a special institution to be trained as an agent. If she refuses, he will be unable to protect her, so she must accept. Dominika arrives at the institution a few days later. Matron, the headmistress of Sparrow School, greets her when she arrives. Before taking Dominika to her room, she gives her a fictitious name to use at school. Classes begin shortly after that, and Matron discusses how the modern world is in chaos, and how Russia is the only country willing to make sacrifices to fix it. Sparrows, spies who specialize in seduction and psychological manipulation, will be trained on the students. Dominika and another student, Victor, are called to the front of the class and asked to strip. Victor does so without hesitation, but Dominika does not. Matron chastises her for it. We then cut to Nate, who has been summoned by the CIA's discipline panel and informed that he will be suspended for his error in Russia and will be unable to leave the country. Nate protests because their mole, Marble, has been working with Nate for 3 years and refuses to trust anyone else, but he is ignored. Back at the Sparrow School, Matron tells them in a class that they must be able to identify what their targets want. She plays some videos on TV as examples for them to work on. The first one, Victor guesses incorrectly, and Dominika corrects him, earning him dislike. Another female student correctly guesses the second, and she is called to the front of the class and told she must use her mouth on the man in the video, who is brought into the classroom in handcuffs. The girl tries to get on her knees but is unable to do so, so she falls to the floor crying. Matron reminds all of the students that they must learn to trick their bodies and demonstrate some basic seduction techniques. Back in the United States, Nate notices he is being followed and informs his superiors. He learns that the CIA hasn't heard from Marble, and he uses the opportunity to remind them that if Nate contacts him, he will talk. They come to an agreement. He can't go back to Russia, but they can send him to a nearby country so the Russian Secret Service knows he's there and Marble can resurface. Nate agrees to bring the team with him. Meanwhile, at school, students are asked to greet a group of soldiers who have recently returned from war. Dominika selects a young man and leads him to her room, where she successfully extends her hand. Matron and the students watch all of the videos of their performances with the soldiers later that day. Matron tells Dominika that her technique was good, but she still hasn't learned to give herself up. Dominika goes to the showers after class, where she is assaulted by Victor. She defends herself by grabbing the wall's water tap and hitting him with it. Meanwhile, Ivan, Korchnoi, and Zakharov are discussing Nate's relocation to Budapest. They want to do something about it, but they are aware that the president does not want them to do anything that could be perceived as hostile to the United States. Ivan suggests delegating the mission to someone else. Matron and a newly arrived Korchnoi question Dominika about her attack on Victor at the Sparrow School. Korchnoi requests a moment alone with Dominika because Matron believes she still has potential. He questions Dominika again after everyone else has left the room, and she explains that she owes and serves the state, not her classmate. She is allowed to return to class, where Matron summons her to the front while Korchnoi observes from a security camera. As Victor enters the room, Dominika is shown a picture of him and asked what he wants. Matron instructs her to give him what he desires. When Victor asks her to turn around, Dominika refuses and takes action. As she undresses, he tells Victor to only look at her, and once she's completely naked, she sits on the table with her legs open, encouraging him to take her. Victor can't get it up and flees when she teases him about it. Then Dominika responds to Matron's question. He wants power. Korchnoi is taken aback. A few moments later, Atron meets with Dominika privately again and informs her that she will be sent back to Moscow. Days later, while visiting her mother at their home, Dominika receives a phone call instructing her to meet Ivan at a restaurant. When she arrives, he sits her down and tells her about her next mission. She'll be sent to Budapest to befriend Nate and gain his trust in order to learn the identity of their mole. He issues her a new passport and documents bearing her new name. Dominika walks away without eating. She arrives in Budapest a few days later and settles into an apartment she'll share with another sparrow, Marta. Later that day, she meets with her new boss, Station Chief Maxim Volontov, and inquires about Nate. She then follows Nate around to figure out his routine. Dominika starts going to the same swimming pool as Nate the next day, and she lets him accompany her when they leave the building. They talk for a while, but Dominika plays hard to get, making up a story about being an embassy translator. The next day, however, she doesn't see Nate at the pool, and the receptionist informs her that her ID has gone missing. Nate, it turns out, already knows she isn't who she claims to be. We cut to him explaining to his superiors that she's been using multiple names and connecting the dots to Ivan. He considers her valuable and believes that her use of her real name is a provocation. After some hesitation, his superiors allow him to approach her and gather information. Dominika visits the embassy after going to Volontov to report her progress and request an embassy pass, and sees Marta chatting with Stephanie Busha, an American politician. Nate interrupts her staring, admitting he was the one who stole her ID from the pool, and invites her to dinner the next day at 8 o'clock. Dominika agrees before departing. Dominika returns to her apartment and searches Marta's room, discovering that she has been purchasing intelligence from Busha. Marta returns home, but she does not catch her in the act. She gives Dominika a copy of the report Volontov sent to Moscow. Dominika has apparently made an enemy. She follows Volontov into a bar the next day after work and asks him to buy her time with a better report, then provokes him into punching her by making fun of his small member. His violence is now captured on security cameras, and Dominika threatens him with taking the recording to the police unless he writes a better report. Nate is alone in a restaurant, waiting for his date, while all of this is going on. He leaves, believing he has been duped, but Dominika follows him closely. Nate returns to his apartment and receives another coded message on the phone, which he quickly writes down and deciphers: Vienna. He's about to leave when a crying Dominika rings his doorbell, and he lets her in. Dominika tells him his boss assaulted him while they are drinking whiskey together. When Nate asks how she knows where he lives, she turns up the volume on the television so they can't hear her. Dominika questions him about what happened in that Russian park and kisses him after he tells her. Nate instructs her to return home and figure out what she wants. Ivan pays a visit to Dominika the next day before departing for Vienna. He inquires about her progress with Nate because their bosses are growing impatient. She lies and tells him she's also working with Marta on her Busha case, but she'll need more money to buy time. Ivan accepts and requests that his coat be returned. Dominika does so, but not before secretly inspecting his passport. Marta approaches Dominika with her gun after he's gone. She overheard the lie and is angry because the Busha case is supposed to be solely hers. Dominika promises to give her all the credit and more money, but she just lied to buy time. Marta accepts only because she has no other option. Later, Dominika travels to Vienna to open a bank account, while Marta visits Volontov to inform him that she knows how to get rid of Dominika. Dominika returns home that night to find Marta dead in the bathtub. Sergei appears behind her and grabs her by the neck to warn her. This is what happens to those who share secrets. He also tells her to call the cops before he leaves. We cut to Nate, who is telling his bosses about his meeting with Marble in Vienna. Marble has given him some files proving Dominika is a sparrow, which makes Nate think she's even more appealing. Meanwhile, Dominika is being questioned by police, but she says nothing. Nate was waiting for her outside the precinct when she left. They return to his house, where he admits he knows she's a sparrow. Dominika responds by telling him her story, emphasizing how she only cares about her mother's well-being. Nate asks her to be his double agent, promising her protection, but she declines because she needs to sleep. He gives her his space. She leaves the room later that night and joins Nate on the touch. She makes love to him after asking if she can trust him and receiving a positive response. Dominika returns to her routine the next morning, writes a fake report on Nate claiming she has him in her pocket, and then returns to her place to wait for his signal, which is a simple phone call that plays her favorite song. Dominika meets with Nate's superiors and is subjected to a liar detector test to determine whether she can be trusted. She demands money when they accept her. They mock her, but when she tells them she can give them Busha, they change their minds. The entire team travels to London the following Friday to meet with Busha. Dominika stays in a special hotel room prepared by the CIA, complete with security cameras and a set of discs hidden under a desk to be exchanged for the real ones later. Moments later, while she is waiting for Busha at the bar, he is taken aback by the sudden appearance of Volontov, who claims to want to assist. Dominika sends him to her room because his presence will frighten Busha. Busha arrives soon after, and Dominika approaches her, explaining that Marta sent her. Busha dislikes the change and is about to leave, but Dominika persuades her to stay by threatening her with dangerous images and mentioning the money. Both women enter Dominika's room, where Volontov awaits. Busha hands her the discs in exchange for the money, and Dominika pretends to take them to her computer to verify their authenticity when she's actually trading them with the CIA's. Dominika and Volontov leave after telling Busha to wait an hour, but Busha is nervous and drunk, so she leaves soon after. When she gets to the street, she notices she's being followed and becomes terrified, so she throws the money in a trash can and crosses the street, where she is hit and killed by a truck. Dominika is in a car with Volontov when this happens, and he quickly calls the police. When they arrive in Moscow, Ivan arrests Volontov and takes the discs from him. Both he and Dominika are suspected of assisting the Americans. When questioned about it, she denies it, so she is tortured in various ways for the true answer, but she refuses to give in. They even show her a video of Volontov being shot for lying, but nothing happens when the interrogator points at her head and she lies again. Ivan takes over at that point, and Dominika manipulates him into protecting her. She is permitted to return home, but when she arrives, she is so filthy that she refuses to let her mother hug her. Ivan returns to his apartment, where Dominika awaits, after a difficult meeting with Korchnoi and Zakharov. He tells her they've granted her request to continue working on Nate, and she kisses him goodbye. Dominika returns to Budapest to see Nate. They go to his apartment, where he expresses his concerns about her sudden release. Dominika persuades him to move her and her mother to America and give her more money, and he agrees before they make love. Dominika wakes up in the middle of the night when she hears a noise and goes to the kitchen to find Sergei torturing Nate. She initially pretends to be on his side, even assisting him in injuring Nate in order to learn the identity of the mole. When Sergei becomes distracted, she hits him back and assists Nate in cutting the straps that bind him to the chair. The three of them engage in a brief fight. Sergei slips, and Dominika seizes the opportunity to stab him. She wakes up in the hospital the next day and goes outside to smoke. Korchnoi approaches her and reveals himself to be Marble. He believes he will be caught soon and does not want to die in vain, so he requests that Dominika expose him so that she can become a national hero and take his place as a mole. She doesn't respond definitively, but after he departs, she checks on Nate and departs as well. She surrenders to police and requests to see the Russian ambassador. When she is taken to him, she tells him to call Zakharov and inform him that she has the name of the mole, which she will give him in exchange for her freedom. The exchange will take place later that night at an airport. Nate will accompany her on the walk to confirm the identity of the mole, and she must not attempt to flee or she will be shot. Nate is angry with her because he believes she has taken advantage of him, but she has a surprise for them, when the Russians approach them with the mole. They remove the bag from his face to reveal that it is not Korchnoi, but her uncle Ivan, who has been framed as a result of Dominika fabricating evidence since she first arrived in Budapest. Nate quickly realizes what is going on and confirms Ivan is the mole. Following the exchange, Ivan is shot by a Russian sniper and Dominika is flown away on a helicopter. Back in Russia, she's been named a heroine and is allowed to live happily ever after with her mother. The film concludes with her receiving a phone call and the only sound on the line being her favorite song,